Bienvenue à cette webconférence traitant des conséquences du Brexit sur les produits marqués CE, co-organisée par le LNE et sa filiale GMED. Avant de vous présenter les interlocuteurs et la séquence, je vais vous dire quelques mots sur le LNE en introduction. Donc, le LNE est un EPIC, un établissement public à caractère industriel et commercial, placé sous la tutelle du ministère en charge de l'industrie et qui a pour principal objectif de s'assurer de la qualité et de la sécurité des produits mis sur le marché. Donc, il réalise cela à travers ces trois grands métiers que sont la métrologie, les essais et la certification. Et dans le cadre de ces activités certification, il est notamment notifié dans le cadre de multiples directives et règlements européens qui vont couvrir de très nombreuses catégories de produits, tels que par exemple les instruments de mesure réglementés, les produits de la construction, mais aussi les dispositifs médicaux qui sont traités par sa filiale GMED, présidée par Lionel Dreux, à qui je vais passer la parole.
Bonjour Thomas, merci de me passer la parole. GMED, en effet, est une filiale du LNE depuis 2018, dont l'activité principale est la certification des dispositifs médicaux et des dispositifs médicaux de diagnostic in vitro. Nous intervenons aussi bien en certification volontaire, selon des référentiels ISO 9001, ISO 1385, mais également en tant qu'organisme d'audit du consortium MDSAP. Et nous intervenons en tant que certificateur dans le domaine réglementaire, en tant qu'organisme notifié au titre de 3 directives et dans un futur proche d'un règlement sur les dispositifs médicaux et d'un règlement sur les dispositifs médicaux de diagnostic in vitro. Cette offre permet à nos clients d'accéder à quasiment tous les pays dans le monde entier. GMED dispose d'une forte expertise dans le domaine des dispositifs médicaux au profit de ses clients, et ce depuis plus de 25 ans. Nos experts sont impliqués dans des travaux techniques et réglementaires en Europe. Et d'ailleurs, n'hésitez pas à consulter les news et guides que nous publions sur notre page LinkedIn et sur notre site web en tapant GMED dans votre navigateur favori. Cette compétence, nous la mettons également à disposition de l'ensemble des industriels à travers notre centre de formation. Plus de 60 sessions par an de formation inter-entreprise, des formations intra-entreprise, qu'elles soient sur site ou en classe virtuelle. Nous intervenons à partir de nos 3 implantations, 2 implantations en France, Paris et Saint-Étienne, et une implantation aux États-Unis, Washington. Nous traversons un moment unique dans le monde des dispositifs médicaux, avec des changements réglementaires importants en Europe, qui demandent des investissements de tous les acteurs, rendus plus complexes dans cette crise sanitaire que nous traversons, et qui entrent en collision aujourd'hui avec le Brexit. D'où l'importance de vous tenir informé des dernières dispositions connues pour l'accès au futur marché britannique. Et je repasse la parole à Thomas qui va vous présenter les 2 interventions.
Merci Lionel. Comme vous le savez, la période transitoire prévue pour le retrait du Royaume-Uni de l'Union européenne s'achève au 31 décembre prochain. Et donc à compter du 1er janvier 2021, l'Union européenne et le Royaume-Uni seront 2 espaces juridiques et réglementaires distincts. De nouvelles dispositions s'appliqueront donc dans les 2 sens, c'est-à-dire pour les flux allant de l'Union européenne vers le Royaume-Uni et du Royaume-Uni vers l'Union européenne. Il est donc essentiel que les industriels et les entreprises qui produisent et commercialisent des produits réglementés s'y préparent. Et c'est pour ça que le groupe LNE vous propose cette webconférence avec l'aide précieuse des ministères britanniques que nous remercions chaudement pour leur participation.
Hello, my name is Danny Langley. I'm the Deputy Head of Goods Regulation at the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. And what I'm going to be doing today is giving a short presentation on the changes to manufactured goods regulation that will apply in the United Kingdom from the 1st of January 2021. So in terms of the context, of course, at the moment we are in the transition period. So the UK has formally left the European Union, but in terms of manufactured goods regulation, the same rules continue to apply very much in the same way as they did before. However, these arrangements will change as of the 1st of January next year, and new regulatory regimes will come into force for Great Britain, which will cover many of the same goods that are regulated at EU level. Now, in this presentation, I will talk about these new arrangements and the transitional measures that we have in place to give businesses time to prepare. However, Before I do that, just to sort of give some very top-line messages. The first thing to say is that while there will be a range of new regulatory regimes in Great Britain, the essential requirements, the technical specifications, and the standards that can be used to demonstrate compliance with those regulations will be by and large the same as they are now. However, that does not mean that there aren't changes that you will need to make or actions you will need to take. The thing that we will always say is that you should check the specific guidance that is available on the gov.uk website. But before I go into a bit more detail, there are 5 key things that all businesses who are trading with the UK should, 5 actions you should take, or 5 things that you should check when trading with Great Britain. The first is to check you understand which regulations apply to your product. That is important because different goods, of course, are regulated in different ways, and the arrangements that will come into force for the Great British market from the 1st of January next year will be slightly different depending on the product and the applicable regulations. The second is to check if your product needs a new product approval or certification, and if it does, then you should begin that process as soon as possible, because even though we have put in place transitional measures to give you more time, these things can take a number of months, and it's important you start thinking about this now. You will also need to check if you need to appoint a new representative to act on your behalf, because in certain sectors there will be a requirement to have a UK-based representative, and EU-based entities will no longer be able to fulfil that function, and you will need to check if that is the case. You will also need to make sure your supply chains and your distributors understand if you are going to acquire new legal duties. For example, GB-based companies who bring in certain goods from the EU and distribute them may become legal importers, and equally, if you bring in certain goods from the UK into the EU market, you may also become a legal importer and acquire new responsibilities. Finally, you will need to check what marking and labelling changes apply to your product, because depending on those previous steps, if you have to have new certification, if you need to appoint a new representative, or if you or your distributors become importers, then you may need to reflect those changes on the information which appears on your product. Now, as I already said, the new arrangements that will come into force for the Great British market will vary depending on the specific good. Here we have given a very brief overview of those different categories of good. The first is goods that are regulated under what in the EU is known as the new approach or the new legislative framework. And generally, these are goods which are currently subject to the CE marking and includes a broad range of products such as toys, personal protective equipment, medical devices, machinery, measuring instruments, and a number of other areas. Another category, of course, is goods which are regulated under the EU's old approach, such as chemicals, vehicles, and aerospace, and those will have new regulatory regimes which will be very similar to the EU regimes. There are also non-harmonised goods, which are those that are subject to national rather than EU-wide product-specific rules. This presentation will focus very much on the first category, on goods regulated under the new approach. The information I will give in this presentation is broadly applicable to the majority of goods which are currently regulated under the CE marking. However, there are specific arrangements and some differences for particular sectors. In particular, I'd highlight that medical devices have some separate arrangements that are different to how we are treating other CE marked goods when it comes to the new regulatory arrangements that will come into force from the 1st of January. In all cases, while I will give general information in this presentation, you should add specific guidance that is available on gov.uk. Now, in terms of goods that are currently subject to the EU's CE marking, there will be a new Great Britain regulatory regime which will replace the CE marking regime for those goods. Now, essentially, that will work very much in the same way as the EU regime functions, and the general concepts and the sort of specific essential requirements and standards will be the same on the 1st of January as they are now. However, there are specific elements which will be replaced by GB equivalents to what is in the EU regime. So instead of the CE marking, there will be the UKCA marking. Instead of notified bodies, there will be approved bodies. And instead of harmonised standards, there will be designated standards. So the framework functions in the same way, the concepts fit together in the same way. However, they obviously it will be a separate regulatory regime. Now, our message is that businesses should take steps to prepare for the new Great Britain regime at the earliest opportunity. However, what we are saying for the Great British market is that CE marked goods that meet EU requirements can continue to be placed on the market in Great Britain in most cases until the 1st of January 2022. Now, there is longer in some cases. For example, I've already mentioned medical devices, which have a longer time period. But for most CE marked goods, there is a year from the 1st of January 2021 when you can carry on using the CE marking. Now, throughout this presentation, I'm particularly going to be talking about the situation as will apply in Great Britain. That is because due to the Northern Ireland Protocol, essentially EU rules for goods regulated under the CE marking will continue to apply more or less in the same way as they do now. I won't go into a lot of detail on Northern Ireland in this presentation, but if there are specific questions, then we can pick those up in the Q&A. So from the 1st of January next year, you will essentially have two options for placing your CE or UKCA marked good on the market in Great Britain. To start with the CE marking, you can continue to use this under two circumstances. Firstly, if your good is self-certified, that is, if it is subject to the internal production control conformity assessment module, and you do not need to use a notified body now, then you can continue to self-certify your good for the GB market using the CE marking. If you're using an EU recognised notified body for third-party certification, you can also continue to use the CE marking for the Great British market. If you are using the CE marking for Great Britain from the 1st of January next year, you will need to carry on using an EU declaration of conformity. And just as a little bit of clarification, you can place the UKCA and CE marking on the same product, including for the EU market, so long as the product meets both sets of rules. So even if you continue using the CE marking for the time being, we would encourage you to start using the UKCA marking as soon as you can. The other option from the 1st of January next year will be to use the UKCA marking. Now, again, if you self-certify your product, now you will continue to be able to do that for the UKCA marking too, in the same set circumstances. However, if you use certain goods, the same as for the CE marking, will require third-party conformity assessment by a UK approved body, which will be the equivalent of a notified body. If you are using a UK-based approved body to certify your good, then it will need to carry the UKCA marking rather than the CE marking. And where you are using the UKCA marking to place goods on the market in Great Britain, you will need to draw up a UK declaration of conformity. Now, the information required on a UK declaration of conformity will be the same categories of information that is currently required on an EU declaration of conformity. However, you will need to reference UK legislation and UK designated standards rather than EU harmonised standards cited in the official journal of the European Union. One of the key changes here is to do with the status of conformity assessment bodies. So unless agreed otherwise in negotiations, which of course are coming to a conclusion, UK bodies will not be able to certify goods for the EU market, and other than the transitional arrangements for next year, EU notified bodies will not be able to certify goods for the UK market, and EU notified bodies will not be able to issue the UKCA marking certification. So in terms of who the bodies are who can issue UKCA marking certification, all UK-based notified bodies who are notified bodies now will become approved bodies from the 1st of January 2021 with the same scope of designation as they currently have. In terms of who those bodies are, you can find details of them on the EU NANDO database. So essentially all of the UK bodies listed on the EU NANDO database are the bodies which will become approved bodies in the UK from the 1st of January, or via the website of the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, UCAS. The final point, of course, is that, as I've already mentioned, UK bodies will not be able to certify for the EU market and vice versa. But in terms of taking action, we'd encourage you always to speak to your current conformity assessment body, as a number of conformity assessment bodies we know are already making arrangements to make sure that to help their clients continue to be able to sell in both markets from next year. The other really key thing to consider is the status of economic operators. So, as many of you will know, both CE and UKCA marking legislation sets out very specific roles and duties for different categories of economic operators in the supply chain: the manufacturer, the distributor, the importer, and the authorised representative. Now, if you are a manufacturer, then generally speaking, your responsibilities will stay very much the same. The biggest changes are for importers or distributors, importers, and authorised representatives. Many businesses who are currently distributors may become importers, and that may happen both for the Great British market and for the EU market. If you currently get your goods directly from a manufacturer or an importer who is established in Great Britain, then you may become an importer and acquire new responsibilities. And if you distribute your goods in Great Britain via a UK-based distributor, then they may become an importer. This brings with it a number of changes of responsibility, but perhaps most sort of pressingly for the 1st of January next year is the requirement to ensure that the importer's address appears on the product or its packaging. For the Great Britain market, we are saying that for 2 years, we will allow that address to be on an accompanying document rather than on the product itself. But again, you should sort of take action to be ready as early as possible to make those changes. The other changes in authorised representatives. Now, in most cases, currently, authorised representatives are optional, other than for a small number of sectors, such as medical devices, where it can be mandatory for third country manufacturers. But generally, they're optional. However, if you do use an authorised representative, or if you are in a category where you have to use authorised representatives, then for the UK market, they must be based in Great Britain or Northern Ireland from next year. And similarly, for the EU market, an authorised representative must be based in Northern Ireland or the EU27 or the EEA. So if you currently use or think you may need to use an authorised representative, then you will need to consider that and also take action in the very near future. To summarise very quickly the transitional measures to do with UKCA marking. From the 1st of January, you can use the UKCA marking in most cases, but you can also carry on using the CE marking in most cases until at least the 1st of January 2022. From the 1st of January 2022, in most cases, you will need to start using the UKCA marking. However, until the 1st of January 2023, you can, for most goods, you can put the UKCA marking on a label or an accompanying document. All of this is detailed on the gov.uk website, so please do read that guidance. There is some information here about other regulatory regimes, but I won't go into the detail now. But just to say that, again, for things like chemicals, aerospace, automotive and medicines, there is lots of very specific information available on gov.uk. Finally, there are some links here to some of the guidance pages I have talked about on the gov.uk website, which will help you understand in more detail the actions you need to take. And finally, there is also an email address there which comes to my team, and if you email that with any questions, then where we can, we will be very happy to help sort of clarify anything that is not clear. Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much, Danny, for your presentation, which was very clear. So we have received a lot of questions, and I propose to start with the first question, which is, will manufacturers which already have CE marking by a EU notified laboratory will need to perform new test products to have the UKCA mark? And regarding the evaluation of technical conformity, is it possible for a UK approved body to recognize tests made by a European laboratory under accreditation?
Thank you very much. So the first thing to say, of course, is that next year in 2021, if you have a certificate of conformity from an EU body, you can continue to use that for the Great British market. It is longer than some years. In some cases, I know the next speaker will talk about medical devices, where there is more time than 1 year, and you will get more details of medical devices next. But after the period of time where we recognise EU conformity assessment, you will need to plan. That means you have to retest the product. I think depends on the arrangement you agree with the new UK approved body who will issue your second certificate. Some of them may be happy to look at the existing tests from an EU body and maybe conduct some targeted assessment before issuing a new certificate. Some may require that you have full retesting. And I mean, we as the British government cannot mandate that. It is down to the UK approved bodies to assure themselves that they can issue a new certificate of conformity and that your product is compliant. So if you speak to a UK approved body, they may be able to issue a certificate without requiring full retesting, but that is an arrangement you will need to agree with a UK approved body after next year. Okay, thank you. A second question is concerning the labeling requirement. Is a common packaging with both the CE and UKCA mark will be allowed to be placed on the market in Great Britain and also in Northern Ireland? Yes, it is my understanding, absolutely. As long as the product is compliant with the rules both in the UK and in the EU. I mean, if you look at lots of products now, like lots of computer, electronics, for example, there are already lots of conformity markings that appear on the same product. So as long as the product is compliant with both sets of rules, then yes, our understanding is absolutely that a product can have both markings on the same packaging, yes. Okay, thank you. A third question about the UK representative person. Can the responsible person delegate its obligation to a third party? So I think on medical devices, I won't say anything, because I think the next speaker will talk about medical devices. But for other CE mark products, for example, under metrology and the metrology legislation, then of course manufacturers can use either authorised representatives in the UK or designate an importer in the UK to carry out certain tasks. There are some things that are always the responsibility of the manufacturer. I mean, for example, drawing up technical documentation and usually affixing the CE mark or UKCA marking. But yes, there are certain responsibilities that can be delegated to a authorised representative or an importer, particularly, who may also be the importer. For example, holding copies of the Declaration of Conformity and liaising with market surveillance authorities. So yes, I mean, the responsibilities that can be delegated are the same as the responsibilities that can be delegated to the CE marking legislation. Because one important point is that the way the UKCA marking legislation will work on the 1st of January is very, very, very similar to how the CE marking legislation works now. So if you look at what CE marking legislation permits in terms of assigning responsibilities to other people, then more or less the same rules will apply for the UKCA marking. Thank you. Another question, where will we be able to find the list of the approved body for the UKCA mark? Great question. So there will be a new database that we will publish, I think, next month in December, that will have the full list. But even now, you can find the list, because what we are doing is all existing UK-based notified bodies will be automatically converted into UK-approved bodies with the same scope of designation as they have now. So if you use the NANDO database, which as I'm sure you all know is the European Commission database of notified bodies, and you search for UK bodies on NANDO, that will tell you the bodies that will become approved bodies next year. So we will publish a list, but if you look at the NANDO list, the EU list, then all of the UK bodies on that list will become approved bodies automatically.
And how many UK approved body do you plan to have on the 1st of January?
So I think it will the same number as now, which I think is about 160. But that obviously covers all areas of CE marking. I know this event is mainly medical devices and metrology, but of course that includes construction products, it includes toys, it includes electronics, it includes everything, but about 160 in total.
Thank you, Danny. Another question, will there be a database concerning the recognized standards that will be used for the UKCA?
Yes, there will. We will publish a list of designated standards, absolutely, on the gov.uk website. The list on the 1st of January, the list will be exactly the same as the list of standards which are cited in the official journal of the European Union for presumption of conformity now. So it may change, of course, over time, but on the 1st of January, there will be a list, and it will be the same standards that are currently cited in the OJEU for CE marking. So for now, the list will be the same.
Okay, thank you. I've got a few questions on the UK responsible. Should the UK responsible have a copy of the entire technical file?
So generally speaking, and again, it varies a little bit between products, and for anyone who's interested in medical devices, please don't listen too much to what I say, wait for the next speaker. But generally speaking, an importer or authorized representative in the UK doesn't need to have the physical copy of the technical file. They have to be able to access it if requested. So they don't need to physically have it, but they need to be able to access it.
Okay, thank you. Another question, can you confirm that you can have only one UK responsible person both for Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
So, I mean, in terms of responsible persons for medical devices, again, I will wait on that one. But in terms of authorized representatives, which is the term for other CE marked areas, then I think yes, you would generally only have one. I mean, authorized representatives or importers in Northern Ireland, I would sort of clarify, can act for both the EU and the GB markets. Is something to bear in mind.
Thank you. Now I've got a question on the UK Declaration of Conformity. Would there be a template for this document?
So generally, no, I don't think we currently plan to publish a template. But what I can say about the Declaration of Conformity is that the information it will require will be the same as is currently required on an EU Declaration of Conformity. So I think it should be fairly easy to repurpose your existing EU DOCs to create a UK DOC. The fields of information required will be the same. The difference, of course, is that rather than EU legislation and EU standards cited in the official journal of the European Union, your UK DOC will need to reference UK legislation and UK designated standards. One thing I will also say is that if next year, for example, you continue to use the CE marking to place your goods on the Great British market, you should carry on using an EU Declaration of Conformity. It is only when you start to use the UKCA marking that you will need to have drawn up a UK Declaration of Conformity.
Okay, thank you. That's very clear. Another question, will the same regulation apply for products coming from Asia and the United States?
Yes, I mean the rules for products being placed on the market in Great Britain will be the same regardless of where the product comes from. Absolutely. I mean the only slight difference perhaps is in terms of the new importer responsibilities. In that we have said for most CE marked goods, where there is a new UK importer and their address is required on the product, we are saying that for 2 years it can be on an accompanying document. That is only for products coming from the EEA, from the from the single market, and that is because where products are already coming to Great Britain from Asia or the US, they are already imports and already need that sort of that address, for example. So that's not a new requirement. But generally, the rules absolutely is the same, regardless of where the product is coming from outside of the UK.
The grace period is fixed today, depending on the type of regulation and the type of products. If you have some delay in the application of the new regulation in the UK, do you plan to move the grace period, to extend the grace period, or it's already fixed?
So the grace periods that we set out are fixed in legislation. We have already, I mean, there will be no delay to the introduction of the new UK regulations because we have already laid in Parliament here in the UK the legislation that we need to in order to create the new UKCA regime that will come into existence on the 1st of January next year. That is certain, and therefore, I mean, the grace period is also fixed in the legislation. So that is the 1 year for most CE marked goods. I think 2.5 years for medical devices. You have more time for medical device regulations, and also more in a couple of other areas such as transportable pressure equipment and marine equipment. But generally, the 1 year is fixed from the 1st of January next year.
Okay, thank you, Danny. We got plenty other questions, but unfortunately we don't have time left. So what I propose that we will keep all the questions and maybe we can send them to you. Are you okay?
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. That'd be great.
Okay, thank you again very much, Danny, for your presentation and your time. And now we will move on to a presentation related to medical devices, which will be given by John Bales, which is a senior policy advisor in the medical devices trade team from the Department of Health and Social Care. So I give you the floor, John.
Hello, this is John Bales, policy advisor at Department for Health and Social Care, here to talk through some of the regulatory changes that will be taking place for medical devices in the UK from the 1st of January 2021, after the end of the transition period as the UK leaves the EU. So firstly, on accessing the UK market, the MHRA will take on the responsibilities for the UK market currently undertaken through the EU system. So that's the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency. 3 key things that will remain the same. We will continue to allow devices to be placed in the UK market that are in conformity with the applicable EU directive until the 30th of June 2023. Products may continue to carry a CE mark, and devices which currently require conformity assessment by a notified body must have a valid CE certificate. And we won't require any changes to the labelling of affected products, and we will continue to accept labelling in the English language, which includes information from other jurisdictions. What will change? There's 3 key things. The UK will have a regulatory system in place on exit day with the UKCA, UK Conformity Assessed mark, which will mirror all the key elements contained in the current EU regulations. MDR and IVDR will not be implemented in the UK. However, MDR and IVDR compliant devices will be accepted in the UK until 30th of June 2023. It's important to note that MDR and IVDR will apply in Northern Ireland from 26th of May 2021 and May 2022 in line with the EU's implementation. That's in accordance with the Northern Ireland Protocol, whereby Northern Ireland will follow EU regulations. So just think about the CE marking. It will continue to be accepted in the UK for a time-limited period. So, as I said, valid until the 30th of June 2023. Class 1 manufacturers can continue to self-declare, and existing certificates by UK notified bodies will remain valid in GB, but not in the EU. So using the new UK conformity assessed UKCA mark, there are a number of rules for how it can be applied. So the marking reflects conformity with the UK medical device regulation, and from the 1st of July 2023 the marking will be mandatory. It can be used by UK approved bodies or any designated body in a third country with a mutual recognition agreement with the UK. Existing UK notified bodies with designations under the MDD, IVDD or AIMDD will have their designations rolled over automatically without having to undergo a new designation process. UK approved bodies will only be able to conduct conformity assessments in relation to the UKCA mark for medical devices, active implantable medical devices and in vitro diagnostic medical devices after the 1st of January 2021. And manufacturers of class 1 medical devices and general IVDs will be able to self-declare their conformity before fixing a UKCA mark and placing the device on the Great Britain market. Class 1 medical devices that are sterile or have a measuring function will still require approval from an approved body in order to be affixed with the UKCA mark and placed on the Great Britain market. Then looking at CE marking and UKNI marking. So CE marking will continue to be needed in Northern Ireland, as mentioned before, in accordance with the Northern Ireland Protocol, which is agreed between the UK and the EU. Manufacturers can continue to self-certify devices to EU standards where relevant, where third-party assessment is required. If an EU notified body used, a CE marking must be applied, and that will be valid for Northern Ireland and the EU. If it's a UK notified body, a new UK NI marking must accompany the CE marking, and that will be valid for the NI market only and not be able to then move into the EU market. And the UKCA mark alone will not be valid for the NI market. Dual marking will be accepted. Devices placed on the NI market will also need a UK responsible person, and they will need to register with the MHRA. So the role of notified bodies. The status of certificates issued by UK notified bodies in the EU. So from the 1st of January 2021, UK-based notified bodies will not be recognised in the EU unless a good is already placed on the market. The devices they have certified will not have valid certificates. These products will not be able to be sold in the EU. And for the status of certificates issued by UK notified bodies in the UK, from the 1st of January, UK will give UK-based notified bodies ongoing legal status as UK approved bodies, and UK approved bodies will be able to issue the UKCA marking and the CE UK NI marking for purposes of Northern Ireland. And the UK will recognise the validity of certificates issued before exit day. Products covered by UK notified bodies will be able to be placed on UK market after exit day. So there's two key changes for device manufacturers. Manufacturers in the UK responsible person. Manufacturers placing products on the UK market must first register with the MHRA. And if a manufacturer is not established in the UK, it must designate a UK responsible person to register and act on its behalf. And manufacturers must have a registered place of business in the UK. For registration of devices, so after exit day, all devices will need to be registered with the MHRA before being placed on the UK market, not only for certain Class 1 devices, as is the case now. As this is an extension of existing business requirements, there will be a grace period for compliance, which will be set out in these slides. The device manufacturers not based in the UK will require a UK responsible person established in the UK with a UK registered address to register the product, who will take responsibility for the product in the UK. And no labelling changes will be required to reflect the role of this UK responsible person. So in terms of registering devices, there's a grace period for registration. And this is set out in the table below. This is for Great Britain, so that's England, Scotland, and Wales. For Northern Ireland, it's slightly different for general IVDs and all Class 1s, which need to be registered from the 1st of January 2021. That's set out in the guidance, which is published on gov.uk, and there's links at the end of the slide. And in terms of registering devices, the practicalities of doing that, the MHRA are currently developing guidance and other resources to support the registration requirements, and we'll be making this available as soon as possible. So these are the responsibilities of a UK responsible person: ensuring declaration of conformity and technical documentation have been drawn up, keeping available copy of technical documentation, providing samples of device to the MHRA, cooperating with the MHRA on any preventative corrective action. Set out there. The UK responsible person is simply a person established in the UK who acts on behalf of the manufacturer established outside the UK. There aren't any specific requirements for qualifications or experience, so long as the UK responsible person is competent to carry out the responsibilities of a UK responsible person as set out in the guidance which we have provided on gov.uk. Manufacturers who require a UK responsible person for the purposes of placing a device in the Great Britain market are advised to appoint one by 1st January 2021, prior to the grace periods for registering devices. For the purposes of Northern Ireland, UK responsible person must be in place by the 1st of January 2021. So for further information, here are some links to gov.uk guidance, as mentioned before, on placing medical devices on the UK market after the end of the transition period. Thank you.
Thanks, John, for this clear presentation. And again, we have a lot of questions. And perhaps the first one, are you confident about the possibility to have MRA between the UK and the European Union for approved body and with a notified body?
As you know, the talks with the EU have intensified between the UK and the EU in recent weeks and months. But unfortunately, I can't comment on whether there will be an MRA at the moment. We just don't know that.
Okay. As EU MD regulation is not recognized by UK for medical device certification, would that mean that medical device regulation certified product will not be able to be a CE mark and UKCA on their pack unless it went through UK-specific registration process.
So we will recognise CE marked devices until June 2023, and that's including CE marked devices which meet the MDR requirements, and devices can be have dual marking if manufacturers wish to do that, so have a UKCA mark as well as CE marking. And then in terms of registration requirements, as set out in the presentation, subject to the grace periods next year, that will be required for all non-UK manufacturers placing medical devices on the market.
Thank you. There is a transition period to register medical devices on MHRA's website.
Mm-hmm.
Should the MD be registered before the first shipment through the UK border takes place after 1st of January? Or can we go through customs without having already registered the device on MHRA's website?
You'll be able to go through before having registered, because it's the registration requirement. There's those grace periods for that reason, to give manufacturers time in order to register devices. And as I mentioned in the presentation, further guidance will be published very soon on exactly how you go about registering devices with the MHRA.
Another precise question. Can a new medical device be placed for the first time on the UK market after the 1st of January on the basis of its EC certificate only, without UKCA marking?
Yes. As I mentioned, we will unilaterally recognise CE marked devices until June 2023.
Okay. Could you please confirm that having the name and address of the UK responsible person on the medical device labels is mandatory from 1st of January?
It will only be mandatory if using this UKCA marking. If using CE marked devices, that will not be mandatory.
Okay. And does the responsible person need to be registered to MHRA? And if so, is it mandatory before 1st of January?
The UK responsible person will only give their details when they're registering devices with the MHRA in line with the grace periods.
Another one, can a UK-based importer place medical devices on EC market only without applying UKCA?
So a UK manufacturer could use an EU notified body, but UK notified bodies will no longer be recognised by the EU.
Thank you. And a new question on the registration with the MHRA. Do devices already registered with the MHRA have to be registered again according to UKCA?
It's only new devices which are placed on the market.
Okay, thank you. I think we have all the questions. And thank you for your clear answers.
Okay, you're welcome.
Presentations.
And I think we can leave it here. Donc, merci à tous pour votre participation. Vous avez été très nombreux. Encore une fois, on n'a pas pu nécessairement répondre à toutes les questions, mais nous allons les garder et nous allons essayer de les transmettre aux différents participants avec vos contacts pour voir s'ils sont en mesure d'y répondre. Nous vous mettons à l'écran, hein, encore une fois, les contacts au GMED et au LNE. N'hésitez pas à nous transmettre aussi vos questions, si elles ont un lien directement avec vos certificats en cours avec le GMED ou le LNE. Et donc, merci à tous et je vous souhaite une bonne journée.
Merci à tous et bonne journée.